We have an exciting video today. In this video today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. Specifically, we're going to be talking about, as we often do, technical breakdowns, pointing out these important levels in advance for people to go ahead and de-risk. We're going to be looking below at what the next possible levels could be. And more importantly, we're going to be looking actually at the upside. And I'm going to point to you where important technical repairs are, as well as we're going to go back and continue our ongoing education of that near-term price action. Everyone, this is Jordan with Conquer Trading and Investing. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not, welcome back. I am glad that you are here. If you enjoy the content, please go ahead and hit the like button, comment below, and if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do that. I want to start off where we left off. We had a couple of important levels, the resistance above us and the support below us. And we were giving, let's say, momentum here to the buy side after a breakout of this reverse head and shoulders. Now, some people do not feel comfortable with this type of pattern, an inverted head and shoulders. For me, myself, what I was focusing on is where that I am wrong. And you will often find me focusing on where I am wrong. In this case, it happened to be over here, this green line of support, 19,730. Reason for that we discussed in the previous video. And you could see when we left off, a couple of things were taking place. Price kept going sideways, right? It came in and it tested, again, this neckline over here. You saw it as resistance. Resistance, once it was broken in this area, it became support. And then it was tested once. And then again over here. And price was able to hold on, again, holding that support right into this area over here when price pierced through it. Stop loss, 19,730, protecting you, right? And then what happened, our expectations were that if this happened, that price would go down towards that low of 17,500 testing over there. And that's what happened next until we had this, I would call it a bit of a surprise buy order at market. It was something like 4,100 Bitcoin. If anyone has the exact number below, go ahead and add it there. I would be interested. Some speculation that maybe it was El Salvador who picked up a bunch of Bitcoin on this day, as did MicroStrategy. From my understanding from the timestamps of El Presidente's purchase of Bitcoin, that was done local time early in the morning. It looks like it was some big player who did not want to see Bitcoin closing below, because don't forget, it was the last day of the second quarter. They didn't want to see Bitcoin closing below this big technical level, the previous cycle all-time high. And you saw that sharp move up in Bitcoin, moving roughly roughly 10%, right? And then fading back below that line. What happens next? That's what I want to answer with you right now. Before we do that, I want to take a look, because it's all relevant, at some important levels. And I want to talk to you about not only what we look on the downside, important levels to go ahead and either lock in gains, de-risk down, or go ahead and make sure that you are staying protected and well in advance. I want to go ahead now, look below, down further. What happens if we do take out this low of 17,500? What are our expectations below? And then I want to go ahead and look at where some technical levels of repair will be on the upside. Again, I'm glad that you're here. I'm looking forward to this video. Let's get into it right now. And I want to start off with this chart. Someone looking at this chart, they might say, I really don't get how these trend lines or why these trend lines are drawn in. And I would understand that too. So the thing is, for example, if you're looking at this chart over here, let me go ahead and draw in some candles over here. It might be difficult to understand why we're recalling a technical breakdown at $27,000. Now, we did that before the breakdown. That was rather late. The 35,000 level, I said, look, this is for people who didn't heed the advice at 53,000 to de-risk down. If we lose this level at that point, we could see much further downside. That unraveled really quickly. We had a 50% move down roughly right after that level was broken. Now, looking at this, these two charts work together to get that $27,000 breakdown and understand that after 35,000, that was the next big level. what we did together in a session. And it's a cumulative knowledge. It is like compounding knowledge. It is putting the work in each and every day that adds up. So I'm not one of those people who will post up a chart on Twitter and trying to get everyone to understand from that one chart alone what's taking place and what's relevant and what's important. For me, myself, it's like that cumulative work that goes in. And this chart here this day was, let's say, worked on in order for us to see what the next big technical breakdown. What we did, or what I did, was look at that June 2019 top and then take it to that March and April 2021 top. And that's the primary line that I drew. All as I did after that, and you know what? You could take a parallel trend line and you could do the same just by like connecting from here to there and then pulling it down, right? And you will see that's the exact angle that I have of this line over here. And that's how we were able to distinguish after price on that Luna collapse came all the way down to 25,500. And then as price was consolidating in this area, we needed to know and understand, what are we looking at below? What's the next big technical breakdown? And by going ahead and drawing in this line, cloning it from that prime trend line that I just showed you, seeing it, connecting it off the March 2020 low, sure enough, after Luna had gone ahead and found support there, we knew that was a line the market was paying attention to. That's how we got $27,000. And you can't look at this chart and understand how we got $27,000 without also understanding what's taking place on this chart as well. Now, below this, that's the question. What happens if we break below? Let's take a look together. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that parallel channel, clean up the chart a little bit. And then I'm going to start with where that low is, and it's coming in right now at 17,500. What happens if that breaks? What's below us? You could see what I also did, and I just want to point it out to you over here, taking the previous cycle all-time high, and then again, finding that area over here of March and in April, I went ahead and I drew a trend line. I then connected it off of the low in December 2018. Now, there was a spike below that occurred during, let's say, the March 2020 crisis, but I am seeing and understand that price also, you could see that price didn't close below it, right? So I know that's an area as well. It's based off of what occurred over here on the December 2018 bottom, but I saw that that was in play over there, and I'm extending that line out. What's interesting, if we keep adding some horizontal lines of support below, now there's not much. There's not much. You can see this line over here. I want you to make sure you see what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. It's connected off this touch over here, off of like that bounce, and then like that dead cat bounce up off of the all-time high back in December 2017. And then we tested that again here in November. I would call that a very light level. I would not expect it to hold, but I want to make sure that we have all the levels below us. Another one over here that's touching the all-time, I'm sorry, that's not touching the all-time high, it's touching the June 2019 high. By the way, for those that weren't here with us, price, after making that low in December 2018, some people think that Bitcoin bottoms are sideways and boring. In 6 months, it did put in a 4x. Now, if Bitcoin were to bottom somewhere in the neighborhood it is, I don't expect that in the next 6 months it's going to put in a 4x or anything like that. I'm just pointing out that Bitcoin bottoms tend to be pretty volatile, so be wary of that. Let me go ahead and continue putting out some lines of interest. You can see this one over here. General, just touching over here in October, the high over there, there's a bit of supply. It's fuzzy. None of these levels really account too much. It's a lot of air. If we break down below 17,500, I would really, really watch out. That's when we could start to see a lot of, let's say, forced sellers having to capitulate, and price could get very spiky. Now, at the same time, there are a lot of people, you're probably, if you're listening to this, you probably have whatever Bitcoin you have on exchange either used for swing trading, or it has open orders waiting in case price were to come down to whatever level you deem a good level, a good opportunity to go ahead and potentially get some Bitcoin at a really, really what you deem to be an inexpensive price. in the long term. I don't have to tell you. I'm sure that some of you listening have orders. If you do, let us know. Let us know what price in the comments below you have them at. I know a lot of friends have orders down over here below and are waiting. And what I'm getting at is even if you see some forced selling going on, some forced liquidations, there's a lot of people and a lot of buyers, right? MicroStrategy, El Salvador making a statement that they believe in dollar cost averaging at these levels. For me, myself personally, as soon as price, why we were on the defensive since January, right? Saying no $1 cost average into Bitcoin. At this point, you want to build up cash reserves, whether or not that's in gold or dollars. That's almost irrelevant, but not into Bitcoin. Once price reached this level, 25,500, then it was time to return to dollar cost averaging. I personally think that these are going to be some really good levels. Now, I don't know for how much lower or longer we go. If you are dollar cost averaging on a regular schedule, actually, I mean, you are looking for lower and longer to give yourself a lower average buy-in cost. Nevertheless, some people are looking at what are important levels below for placing some potential buy orders. There's nothing really of substance towards we get towards this area over here. So I made it a little bit, let's say, highlighted. And if you go back, you could see, okay, this was first, there was a touch over there, resistance, light resistance, price over there, again, found resistance. In this area, it was resistance again over here, resistance. I'm sorry. Those are all support prices above. That broken resistance is now becoming support until it breaks, and then price again finding resistance, and then price breaks out to the upside and finds it as support. So that level is highlighted, and I think it's also interesting to point out at that same level, you have that confluence of this trend line that we looked at just a little bit earlier. There's one more that I want to add in for now. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't know what is going to happen if we start seeing any type of systematic risk in the markets. Nobody knows, right? For now, I think this is as far as we will go. This last line I want to talk about with you, if price starts, let's say, making lower lows, if price takes out 13,700, at that point, we will have to be prepared ahead of time. And I will continue looking at places of interest. I think for right now, this is more than sufficient. This line over there that I just drew at 9,800, pretty significant. It is, if you remember, this line over here, this trend line at the time was what we used to distinguish when the technical breakout of the bull market was occurring. We spent a lot of time in this area between 7,000 and 8,000 and 9,000 accumulating Bitcoin for a long period of time until we had the breakout. And you could see the breakout of that trend line. This is the beginning of the bull market, and price comes in after the breakout and retests that broken trend line. Here it holds as support, and then price comes up, confirms it again, and then it's off on to the running. The bull of all bulls was running and charging very hard. Don't forget, a lot of people seeing Bitcoin come off of 10,000 and then quickly into 14,000. They want to take profits at that point. It was very hard having people understand that Bitcoin does do Bitcoin things, and then quickly moved into $19,000. Again, at this point, we were looking for a little bit of a pullback. It was only like a 17% pullback. And as soon as price came up, you have to follow what price is doing. It was apparent that it was going a lot higher. There were a lot of people at that time taking profits because they believed that Bitcoin was oversold here at 20,000. And then Bitcoin from there had another 3x into 60,000. This line over here, if that is tested, I think that's pretty significant support. If it's not, then, things are really, 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 really bad out there. Now, we looked at the bear case, or we looked at important levels below. Let's also do that on the upside right now together. And I want to start right now with a new fresh chart. And I want to add in the most obvious line, and that's this trend line over here. This is connecting the November all-time high on Bitcoin into that move towards late April over here, $48,000. And I think that right now, if you're watching this video, I think that you're aware of this trend line. And not only that, I think that everyone in the space is pretty aware of that trend line. Now, it was a lot different. Going back over here, there was no one else that was watching or calling the technical breakout of the bull market off of this diagonal downward sloping trend line. As you see now, this has become quite common, and I like that everyone is looking for it and watching it, but I think by the time price moves into this trend line, it would be pretty late. I think that price will make some pretty, let's say, important repairs before price breaks from this trend line. And at that point, I think we could confirm that indeed there's a good chance that a new bull market, whether it is a mini bull market lasting anywhere from months, right, to several months, or one that is prolonged, that is dependent on what is going on with the overall macro. So we're not going to get into that right now. We're focusing right now on price and price alone. And I want to add in another trend line for you, and that's over here off of that $48,000 high, and you could see it's connecting to the next high over here and that next swing high over here, and then extending down. Now there's some space over here that's important. We'll get back to that at the end, but I think right now it calls for being extremely cautious. So that's what I'm doing right over here. I'm not getting aggressive. I'm leaving room over here, and by the time we see this repair take place or price break above this trend line, let's say that there's a better chance that some type of low, whether it is a near-term low, an intermediate long-term low, or the ongoing low, I have no idea, but some type of low being established. Now let me go ahead and add another trend line for you. Before I do, I want you to focus on this one. A lot of people remember this trend line over here because that's what set up the breakdown of 35,000 and that big technical breakdown. Notice that this line is sloping upwards. This line of support is sloping upwards. That's important because right now what you are looking at is a line that is sloping downwards, coming off the summer low over here from 2021, and then over here where price, though it pierced below during the Luna, let's say collapse, this is where price found support, and this is downward sloping right now. Price needs to get above this line over here in order to, let's say, look a little better. Now, here's the thing. By the time that price breaks this trend line over here, right, the next move that we'll be looking at, and I have one more trend line to draw in with you in 1 second that's going to be coming into play, but the next real worry would be this line over here. That would be looking for price at that point to see if it's able to make it through that resistance, and then you can see there's more resistance above. There's a lot of resistance in this whole area that price is going to need to overcome. So it's going to need some type of catalyst. Most likely that catalyst would have to come from the top down. It would have to come from the Federal Reserve. It would have to come from the Federal Reserve pivoting. Now, a pivot by the Federal Reserve, I want to be very clear about this because a lot of people in this particular space really don't understand, is not necessarily the Fed going ahead and starting cutting interest rates and restarting QE purchases. That could happen. If there was a crisis, you would see that happen. But most likely the next Fed pivot will be the Fed moves from raising interest rates to pausing them. If you're not familiar, the last time that the Federal Reserve did that, that was right here in December 2018. Now, quantitative tightening, you'll remember, that kept running into September 2019. That's where quantitative tightening stopped. Why the markets or the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve was undergoing quantitative tightening. Bitcoin over here had that huge move up that we just spoke about of a 4x, and that happened because right here the Federal Reserve hiked interest rates. And the market knew and understood that that would be the last hike of the rate cycle. Now, the market didn't wait for the Federal Reserve to say, oh, that's our last hike. The market reacted. A couple of weeks later, the Fed then went ahead and made a verbal pivot, and that was indeed the last rate hike of that cycle, even though you saw quantitative tightening continue. That could be something that would propel Bitcoin into some type of relief rally off of its low if the Fed at any point in the future were to stop or pause their rate hikes, or even that could potentially be on the next rate hike itself if the market does perceive that will be the last one of the cycle. There's more. I want to focus on these two areas over here because we had two spike downs over here. And I think that why it's less relevant to this line over here, I think it's important for us to pay attention to. I'm drawing it in just so if we come into that area that we're aware of the potential resistance it might offer. And then finally, I want to leave you off with this, which is quite aggressive. But nevertheless, that's why I have it as a lighter color. I think that price being able to, let's say, break this trend line, that would be the first potential indication that we are seeing the beginning of repairs take place. And these levels, right, in the way that I described them to you. Now, if you were to look at this chart posted on Twitter, it really would not make a lot of sense. That's why it's important, or that's why my medium of choice is YouTube, where I'm able to really get into the charts with you, to get into the TA and help you understand not only what's being presented, but how you can do it for yourself. With that, I want to leave you all off. No, we got to get back into it. Hold on, let's jump over here to this chart and where we are right now. Actually, I could go for a lot more. I'm not going to do that right now. I think that we did a good session, put in a good session. Tomorrow I'll continue, and tomorrow I'll continue with where we are right over here. Before we do that, I just want you to let you know, obviously on this breakdown, right, at this point that was, what were you doing? If you were long, you were taking that stop. It's a beautiful thing to honor and take stops. By the way, me myself, you're not going to believe this, but my win percentage is very, very, very low. With this type of TA, it is roughly close to 50%. With systematic trading, it's just above 30%. But what most traders fail on, and I don't want you to fail, what most traders fail on is they're unable to take stop losses and lots of small stop losses. They don't want to be wrong. That's where you go wrong. What you're trying to do is take lots of small stops, lots of small wins, and then have a small portion of your trades actually push those winners and go on to make a significant amount of profits. You're going to see, you're going to learn, you're going to see it happen in real time. We're going to do it together. I just want you to know right now, in order for any type of, let's say, because right now the sellers have taken control. I could remove this trend line right here, right now. I could go ahead and remove this trend line. Right now, I'm not going to remove this trend line over here because technically it would still be in play until the stop, until the price makes a new low over here, taking out 17,500. So I'm going to leave that in there. You'll learn more about that later. I'm not really getting into that right now. What I want you to focus in on, sellers in control. Right now, this line that was the resistance going on from that sideways channel remains relevant. The only way that we would be looking to return to the buy side would be if we were to break above that. Now, I just have to also really clarify for all of you the way that we do things, right? It's not whether or not we have a bullish bias or a bearish bias or we're neutral. We do it very systematically. We have something that defines whether or not we are in an uptrend, whether or not we are in a downtrend, and we only trade in that direction. Right now, Bitcoin, Ethereum, it's the short side only. Now, I prefer to short on Ethereum. I have my reasons for doing so. It is more profitable to short Ethereum and or alts than it is Bitcoin. But I happen to believe in Bitcoin. I happen to believe that Bitcoin is hope for the future, and why I know how to, let's say, systematically attack it on the sell side. I prefer to do that on Ethereum. Maybe in the future we'll be talking more about that together. Right now, let's leave you off until tomorrow. Everyone have a beautiful day. Thanks for watching this video. If you made it to the end, go ahead and make sure you give it a thumbs up. All right, everyone. I'll talk to you soon.